This year's Olympics clearly were vastly different from those previous ones. So Rob, can you talk to us a little bit about how the pandemic affected your experience?
Well, it was a very different experience because the favorite part of going to the Olympics for me is kind of being a photo tourist while I'm there. I try to soak in the environment and just take advantage of being in another country, in another city that I've never been to. So having that kind of denied from all of us was unfortunate, but it is what was going on at the time. We were in a 4-day hard quarantine when we arrived, so we couldn't leave our hotel rooms. Then we were in a 14-day quarantine until we could take other transportation other than the Olympic buses to get to our venues. So after 14 days, I was able to use subway, which was wonderful and the best subway system I've ever been on in the world. Other than that, as far as the photography, they kept a meter between every photographer. We couldn't move. I was the senior staff photographer for the swimming events, diving events. So you'd have to pick your spot, and because I've done 5 summer games and swimming is what I shoot, I know where to be. So I picked my spot knowing over the last 5 Olympics of where I should be, because once you pick that spot, you can't move from it. That made it unfortunate because sometimes in the past Olympics, we could move 20 feet over or down a little bit or, as needed. But this Olympics, there was no movement. So you just shot what you saw from your wherever you were seated. After that, it came down to we had a reduced editing crew. I was being edited on site in Tokyo one night, and then the next night I would reprogram my camera and my photos would be going to an editor in Los Angeles because they reduced staff going to Tokyo. So they took only 3 editors they took with them to Tokyo.
All right, thanks, Rob. So Beijing is about 5 months away. Mm-hmm. 1, are you going? And then number 2, how are you preparing for that one?
I am on the team, and today we got the playbook, which is the book that gives you all the current rules for going to Beijing. We learned that if we are vaccinated, we don't have to go through the 3-week hard quarantine, which we heard was mandatory while we were in Tokyo, but apparently it's not if you're vaccinated. So that's wonderful news. That means we can hit the ground and we can leave immediately and get to our venues and start meeting our venue managers and understanding our venue and preparing to start shooting. So the only issue is at the moment is that there are very few flights. It looks like they're going to do charter flights for it. The cheapest flight right now to Beijing in late January is $10,000. That may cause issues on staffing numbers. So I'm on the team, but until I have a ticket and until I've passed my 96-hour quarantine to get onto the plane, I never quite count on it.
So, and do you even know yet? What about coming back?
Coming back's pretty simple. We just have to have the international carriers will probably demand a 48-hour negative test. They did that in Tokyo, and that should be taken care of automatically. We will be tested every single day as soon as we hit the ground in China.
Wow. All right, so let's take a step back and talk a little bit more about your career. So you've been a photojournalist for 4 decades. You must have seen an incredible change in all things, including technology and some of the skills that are required of photojournalists these days. Can you talk a little bit about what's changed and then also what's stayed the same?
When I was your age, we were shooting slide film, negative film. So let's just take an example of shooting a Suns game. We would shoot 1/4, and it was over at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum down the street. We could only do 1/4. We had to leave, drive back downtown across the street, and process our film, then print up 2 photos only, write captions for those photos that we would stick onto this back of the print and turn those in. And there would be one for the cover, and there would be one for the jump page. So we saw very little of the game, and again, the whole goal was 2 images to get out of the game. Today, my son's game, if I don't put 30 images out, it feels like I'm sort of slacking off. But, like in an Olympic competition, there may be hundreds of photos that are moved from one session. So we've sped up. It's not slow anymore. Everything's fast shooting, fast delivering the images to an editor, fast captioning, and getting it to our clients as fast as possible, because a part of the USA Today network, we're in competition with Getty, Associated Press, Getty, AFP, and Reuters. So there is a definite speed issue. There is no holding content. We've got to get it out, get it right, and move it on as fast as possible now.
Okay, pop quiz. How many of you know what a jump page is? Okay, not the old journalist in the room. Who? Okay, what is it? Yeah.
Oh, it's the jump page. It's like when there's a story on the front page and further on, so you would set photos.
Absolutely. Old print newspapers jumping from the front page to the inside pages. Thank you. Awesome. One of the other big changes in photography and all of journalism has to do with access. Some of you might have seen this story recently. Obviously, in California, there were some high-profile events, or after some high-profile events, California just recently passed a law that basically allows journalists to do their jobs. It sounds simple, but it's really not. This measure says that journalists can be behind police lines while covering civil protests. There's been a trend over the years, especially after 9/11, and the COVID pandemic has sort of thrown a even tighter control on this. But can you talk a little bit about that in terms of access and how that relates to photography?
Well, if any state would have done this, it would have been California, because they led the way in the 1950s. The Chandler family, who used to own the Los Angeles Times, and had great political influence in California, had a law passed where photographers could go into and cover fires. And all the great fire photos that you see in the United States all come out of California. Because like in Arizona, there is no access. There's rules that keep us out, because we would be trespassing if we were past a police line, which is a good excuse to keep photojournalists out of the fire area. And they say it's for our safety, but if you go to look at California's histories, there's been virtually none that I know of photojournalists that have ever died in California covering fire. So safety is not the issue, it's just a reason to keep us out. As far as translating that to sports, there were big changes after 9/11. There was a lot of background checks on people and tightening of security everywhere. The sports teams followed suit by reducing the amount of photographers that went to games. Like, practically anybody could get a credential to kind of almost any sporting event, maybe outside of the Suns. But it was very easy to get a pass to go to an ASU football game or a Cardinal game. That all ended after 9/11. Then COVID. Between 9/11 and COVID, social media started gathering, and it brought in a lot of people of independent, I'm not saying organizations, but anybody can, be a photographer for a website. So they tried to accommodate that for a while, and then it didn't work. And once COVID happened, they started really reducing the amount of photographers that were going to be on the playing surface. The other thing that was going on at that same time, just before COVID, was every sports team was developing their own social media staff. their own content gathering staff, and they were delivering content to anybody that wanted it, mainly news organizations who needed B-roll, or they needed a photograph, but they didn't have the opportunity to, due to staffing shortages, to send someone there, but they could provide it for you. And that in itself led to the numbers of legitimate media being cut back to cover the teams, because they're providing the content. In turn, they're taking up more space on their playing surfaces, especially limited surfaces like the Phoenix Suns. They've really cut back to just 4 photographers that are allowed to sit on the court: AP, Getty, USA Today, Sports Images, and the Republic. And if there's ever overflow, then some of us get moved upstairs. So it's just a wave of, like, even ASU has really pushed to get their content, Cronkite News Service, they're delivering content to people that want it. In a way, it's cutting into us a little bit, or we're having to share the area. That's just the change in the business, and that's fine. It is a change from the way it was 20 years ago.
We're not competing with you, I promise.
We're partners.
Yes. I was actually, Mike Meister's in the back of the room, and I was asking him earlier today for permission to run a Republic photo. So, and we definitely appreciate and want to respect, the photographers when we're out at scenes or out at events. You kind of mentioned that competition, space. Do you feel that? And is there anything that you feel like you can do as someone who's going out and shooting these events?
I mean, there's always competition, and there's always people that, when we could rush the field, we don't get to do that anymore at Cardinal games. We're forbidden to go onto the field pregame, and what hurt was, after COVID, we're no longer allowed to go on the postgame field. And there were great images to be made on the postgame field, especially with coaches greeting each other in the moment. There was a lot of emotion on the faces, and as I was looking back through these photos I picked, it's like I just saw a lot of photos I'll never be able to shoot again because of the access that has been taken away in general from the media. Now, you can have that access if you work for the team. And also that was never that's a new place to go looking for a job as the team photographer. But access has been very limited for the media. As far as competition, it's, I love competition. Frankly, there isn't enough of it because, say 25 years ago, when there was the Mesa Tribune, the Phoenix Gazette, the Arizona Republic, AP, UPI, Getty, there would be 6 photographers at every single news event. And it was wonderful because the next day all the papers would come out, and there would be a winner and there would be a loser. Well, there would be one winner and everyone else was the loser. But we would all keep track of all these papers and try to figure out, if we got beat, how do we get beat, and how not to get beat next time. But right now, I go out on a lot of news assignments. I'm the only person there, and I miss the competition because it was driving you to be better.
And I think that's really cool to think about too. Like back in the day, we would all see the front pages of all the newspapers across the country, and boy, if you got one of those images that really was, telling, a powerful image, that was something big. So you talk about competition, you talk about, specifically in sports, and, things are moving so quickly, you have to do so much. I'm sure there's students in the room who are looking at sports photography. What are some of the tips of the trade you can share with them?
Right now, it's if you want to be successful, basically in any kind of photography, but especially sports photography, if you've got to take your picture and you've got to get a caption that won't get you sued, it has to be correct, but you've got to get it from your laptop to where it needs to go. And that seems to be a problem with younger photographers right now, of not knowing what the industry standard software is photomechanic. That's how we edit, that's how we look through all the pictures quickly, that's where we can caption, and that's how we FTP. And if you can't do those three things in photo mechanic, it doesn't matter how good your photo is. If you can't get it from A to B, I mean, that's one of our biggest issues with interns, is that photography is subjective. We can all shoot pictures. You know, at the Olympics, there's 100 people shooting with me that are all making basically what I'm shooting, more or less. But if you can't get it from A to B in a timely manner, kind of the game's over. You've got to work on the caption writing and how to get the correct coding in the IPPC fields, and you've got to get it from your laptop to where it needs to go via an FTP function. Do that, and you'll be a very valuable employee somewhere as you learn to get better at photography. You know, you're all learning how to do it. You'll get better at it, and you'll get a lot better at it in 10 or 15 years. But you want your bosses not to go crazy. You got to be taught how to get the image from A to B quickly.
All right, good advice. We also talked a little bit before this about, you know, some of those soft skills involved. You know, there's taking photos or making images, whatever you want to call it, that involves a skill, but then there's also personal skills as well. When we're talking about advice, you've been in the Valley for years. You've developed relationships with teams, with spokespeople, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is, or if it's not important?
Oh, it's very important. Do your homework. Know who the communication director is at your teams or at the sheriff's office or the governor's office or wherever. Learn who their assistants are, so you can go in and act knowledgeable. Also, find their photographs so you know who they are. It really gives you a real jump on getting something done if you can spot who's going to help you. So I just really do your homework. Learn who's there, learn who can help you, and be polite. Just don't ever demand. Just be so polite about dealing with people for the first time and all the time. They'll really help you if you treat them nicely.
You hear that? Be polite. All right, so we've talked a little bit about technology changes and the speed. We've talked about society changes in terms of access. Let's talk a little bit about the job itself and how that has changed as well. And so I happen to know photographers who now it's not only taking photos, but you take video as well. It's learning audio, it's writing great captions, sometimes it's writing stories, all these other things that are involved. Can you address that a little bit?
15 years ago, we had to learn video. And again, that was a tough change for people that, we went to school or we grew up shooting, being kind of one-task employees. And that was good, that was what it was. But when video came along, we had to learn video, and it was a natural transition for most of us. And there'll still be times where I have a favorite that I like to do, definitely. But we have a lot of fun doing video and working on projects and audio work, and the times we have to sit in and be an editor. You just have to be flexible, and things are always changing, like from film to digital, and now stills to video. I just think you have to keep an open mind. I think down the road, you'll probably like one better than the other, whatever that is, writing, being an investigative writer or being a columnist or a novelist. I think you'll, in 10 or 15 years, you're going to start narrowing down the passion in your heart, and then that's the time to start really following it.
All right. So we've got a lot of students in the room. If you had some advice to tell your younger self, if you were out here in the audience, what would you tell yourself?
Well, I would have done a lot more research on where I could have gone to work.
Don't say that. Your boss is in the room.
Not negatively. Like, I wasn't aware of Getty 40 years ago, 45 years ago. In fact, Getty was just developing. They were a very young, new company. But I love shooting golf. I wish I had found a way of just shooting golf all my life. And Getty's the only company I know in the world that employs 3 staff golf photographers. But that's really a tough thing. There are only 3 positions like that in the world, other than maybe during the heyday of magazines, you could have gone to work for Golf Digest or one of the golf magazines. But I think I would have liked to have taken a risk at the time and hyper-focused on one content area. But that would have required me being more ambitious at the time and really reaching out to people in the industry. I sort of kept all my contacts within the Arizona area, and I wish I had reached out further, and especially to the East Coast at the time.
Okay, one more kind of along that track. So you would have told your younger self to do more research about potential job opportunities. Let's flip that and say, you know, if you're a hiring editor and all these students were submitting their content to you, what are you looking for?
Well, that was my story for 40 years ago. Now it would be, I would want to have high video skills and audio skills and really be more open-minded to other media forms. Maybe spending more time trying to be a better writer. I think the writing skills will just go a long way in any business, in journalism or outside of journalism. And I wish I had spent more time maybe being a better writer, because I can tell you I spent most of my time, if not all of it, trying to be a better photographer. And, you know, it paid off. I am that. But today, barring these agencies, AP Getty, where you're still a photographer or you're a football photographer or whatever, there are very few operations that are so highly focused on skill set. Newspapers, television stations, you got to do about 3 or 4 things to impress someone that you want to be hired by.
Okay, including writing captions, spell check counts, grammar counts, right?
It's shocking how hard it is to get a good caption written. Just write it in one sentence. It's a real difficult skill set, apparently. So 1 or 2 sentences, you know, again, go to the source. Look up AP's photos. They're all online. Look up Getty's photos. Study how they write a caption. It's right there. Just anything you want to know is available online. Go out and study it. It's all there. Emulate that.
One of the other things when I think about photojournalism is, you know, when you're sitting in college, at least when I was in college, I thought, oh my gosh, journalism, there's so many and it's so competitive, and how will I ever get a job? But as you get older, you sort of realize it's a small world. And, you know, photojournalists often know each other. They know, you know, you can ask the folks in this room, hey, do you know anybody at, you know, the Philadelphia Inquirer? Do you know anybody at the New York Times? And the answer is usually yes. There is a network. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is, or if it's not important?
No, networking is the most important thing, because it's a quick story how I got my first internship at the LA Times. I had been working for a couple of years freelancing for AP, and there was a photographer out of the Bay Area named Sal Vider. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and you'll know his image. It's the Vietnam image of a soldier returning home, and his family's running towards him, like his wife and then 3 children are trailing with their arms open, and he's standing rigid from the shots from the back of him. And he won a Pulitzer for that great image. Sal would come out and do spring training, so he would hire me. And I had worked for him for a couple spring trainings, and then I applied for the LA Times internship, and that was in 1985. And they called me and they said that Sal Vider had called and put a recommendation for you, and that was good enough. You got the internship because of that. And I said, well, I want to come out for the interview. And they go, well, you're in Phoenix. And I said, it doesn't matter. Just tell me what time to be there, and I'll be there. And they said, you don't have to come. And I go, no, just so. I drove over. I had family in the area. But I drove straight into the interview, and I walked in, and they said, you have the job. We didn't expect you to actually show up. If you were going to actually take the effort to drive over here 6 hours for a 30-minute interview, you have the job. And then Sal's recommendation. So the little networking and the little bit of extra effort pays off huge in this business.
And going back to what you said earlier, I can't remember if it was be kind or show respect or, treat people well, right?
Yeah, I think you put the extra effort into anything that you do, it's taken notice of.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's open it up to some questions from all of you. Do you have questions? If you could, there's a microphone right up here. Just come on forward and ask some questions. And when you talk, do you mind saying your name and maybe what year you are in school, and if you have any particular interest?
Yeah, so my name is Keitra Bibis, and I'm a freshman this year, and I'm more interested in writing, but I feel like I could be interested in a lot of different things, such as like producing and editing. And I am really interested in photography too, and I know it's like an art form. So I was wondering, how do you balance like the art of taking like a beautiful photo while also kind of telling a story with it?
I don't worry about that ever. I just concentrate on making a good image. The art form is the art form. It's journalism. I honestly don't go in with preconceived notions. I just try to make a good picture every day, and that might be too simplistic, but honestly, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. This isn't commercial photography. I'm not trying to involve myself or set anything up. Other than those portraits you saw, I don't involve myself in moving anybody. I move me and the camera, and whatever happens, happens. When I'm bored, we all get bored of what we do. I'll find a photo that I like very much that someone else has shot, and it's just an exercise. I try to duplicate it. Honestly, I'm trying to rip it off. But what happens in the process of doing that is you can't do that. It becomes its own thing. But I've set up something, a real steps of ideas of what I want something to look like. And then in the process of trying to make that happen, it becomes something entirely different in my own. But it's a good exercise when you get stuck. Find a photo you want to shoot, and then you can't do it, and it becomes something different and something of your own.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a senior, and I'm interested in photojournalism. For the Summer Olympics, how did you pack your camera gear and plan for that?
I'm sorry?
How much camera gear did you pack with you, and how did you plan for that?
Well, summer's easy because we don't have to take a lot of clothing. We kind of all dress like bums for the most part, but we just shirts and shorts. But as far as camera equipment, I had 3 cameras. I had a 600 f4, I had a 2 to 600, I had a 1.4 converter, and 3 Sony A9 IIs, 70-200, 24-70, and a 14 to 24.
So did you check it all, or did you carry it?
I checked it all in a think tank bag. Fortunately, all that equipment is very little. I also want to carry all my gear on the plane with me, because the photographer's worst nightmare is arriving anywhere and their gear didn't arrive with them. So the 604 went into a separate bag as my second check-in bag, and then all my other gear, barring the monopod, was all on the plane checked in with me. So I just can't check camera equipment. It just drives me absolutely crazy of flying for 12 hours thinking that it might not arrive with me. So I make sure I pack in a way where it goes on the plane with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sam.
Hi, my name is Dominic Contini. I'm a freshman here, and I'm actually an intern for Sports Illustrated. And I was just wondering your thoughts on with the rise of video. Do you think photography will ever die?
Photography will never die. I think there's a balance. It ebbs and flows from video to stills, but you can't hang video on your wall. And you say, well, that's called a television, but that's not what I mean. There's great need for still photography, mainly to remember things, to experience it in real time where a moment's frozen, and video doesn't offer that experience. It offers an entirely different, great experience, but there will never be any death of still photography. In fact, it's never been bigger because it's the first time in the history of the world that every single person practically carries a camera with them 24/7. And we're seeing images that we've never seen before, and now with drones, I mean, these drone images are blowing my mind that, just perspectives that we never, think you could have gotten them with a helicopter at $2,000 an hour, but only network television could afford that briefly. But you're seeing images, again, that we've never experienced before, just in the last 10 years. So now, still photography is not going anywhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mason Ajiboy. I'm a freshman here. And I was wondering, since COVID changed so much with photography, like when you said there's no longer, at the Cardinals game, you can't do post-game shots and they're lowering the staff. Is there any positives that COVID did for photography? Anything that changed? Made things
Positives.
better?
Well, I've never thought about it that way before. Yeah, it's given photographers a little more time to rest. Where photojournalism can be burning the candle at both ends a lot of times. And I think the slowdown maybe got us thinking about, we can still do a great job, but maybe we need to be so, working 16 hours a day. Maybe we should just figure out a way of doing it in 8 hours and being with our family and our friends in a more healthy lifestyle. So that would be the positive of COVID. I think it slowed us down, and we probably needed to be slowed down a bit. There'll be times when we do work 20 hours a day, but we don't need to be doing it today or tomorrow, There'll be times when you have to go to the Olympics and you'll do your 18 hours, and that's fine because that's what you're there for. But COVID has slowed things down in a good way, at least in my opinion.
Not me.
Thank you.
I mean, just to jump in there, I think one other, positive to me that came out of it was the fact that, when everybody is stuck at their homes, journalists were out there still working and, could go to the places that not everybody could, and so had to be, the gateway to a lot of things, sporting events when they weren't open yet. A lot of things were happening in the world and people just couldn't get out. And so, everybody's on their phone or on their devices all day looking and looking and looking. And, I think it really highlighted the importance of what we do.
Well, we were definitely front and center. All the photographers or videographers that were on the street, but since I was doing mostly stills during 2020, there was great apprehension and fear going out every day because, a lot of writers, a lot of editors, a lot of management were doing their jobs from home. And yet we never stopped going. In fact, we went into the crowds, we went into the riots, we went into the, I went to the Fiesta Bowl and caught COVID there. There was a super spreader event, the last Fiesta Bowl. So I think after talking to a lot of colleagues at the Olympics is, my favorite part of the Olympics is we're sitting side by side with our colleagues, and our friends normally sit around us so we can talk because it's the only time we see each other, during a 2 or 3 year period. We catch up, what's going on at your place, and so on. And I realized that there was photographers are exhausted. that worked through the last 20 months. I went out every day going, is this the day I bring back the virus that hurts my wife or kills somebody in the house? And it was exhausting. But that's our job. We went out and we did it. So I just felt there was a lot of fatigue in especially the newspaper photographers, that sports is just a piece of what we do. I say I do about half sports and half other, but it was a very tiring last 20 months for newspaper photographers. But I would never wanted to have changed that. It's just the nature of, we never stopped, we just kept going.
One of the things we talked about before this was that safety aspect of it. And a lot of times photographers, you brought up wildfires and where photographers can and can't go. And can you talk a little bit about sort of that, like how far do you go to get the shot? And, are you, we work with students all the time. And so in Cronkite News, we are very hyper vigilant about safety measures. Am I right, Alberto? Right, we are very careful with that. But you go to work at a professional shop and a commercial shop, it's different, and it's your job. But you still want to take care of yourself. So what do you consider when you're like, is this safe to go there or not?
Journalism is about pushing boundaries, because if we just set a limit at 50%, we're never going to learn anything or write a great story if we're like only trying 50%. But if we're pushing the edges and poking around the envelope, and you have to follow the law. Like the fire situation, you come to the roadblock in the road in Arizona and you don't go for any further. You can't. If you go to a fire locally, in the middle of just around here, and you can't go that way because there are police telling you can't go. There's no reason you can't explore the perimeter, around the 360-degree perimeter. So, and you're not violating a law if there's nobody on that street where you can drive in and you can see something. Now, are you going to go into the fire scene? I would absolutely say it's not where you should be. You get injured, but there's, our job is to press and push but legally, and never disobey a law enforcement officer, even if they're wrong. It's just, you got to obey the officer, and if you don't like that officer's answer, then move to a different location and see what the next people have to say.
Get creative.
Very creative, yeah.
Mr. Lozano.
You were talking earlier about being prepared, do your homework, making sure you know the PIOs or the media relations person and whatnot. But what about being prepared when it comes to shooting the game, knowing the team, the players, what they do? Sometimes it is, they might say, wow, how lucky was that person to get that shot? But it wasn't luck at all. They were prepared. They did their homework. Can you talk to them a little bit about that? Mm-hmm. That being prepared is one of the most important things.
One of my mentors told me as I was growing up that I'd rather be lucky than good every single day. And, clearly we would like luck on our side all the time, because that does make the difference. But, I'm an Arizona kid. I grew up here. I'm a mountain specialist for the Olympics, ski jumping and sliding. And it's like, I didn't know those skills. How did I learn those skills? And when I learned I was going to be doing these events, I studied Getty and I studied AP, and I looked to the last couple world championships in ski jumping, and I researched the venue that I'm going to. There are satellite images. There are national trials always held in a month, 6 weeks before the Olympics in the host country. China's different because it's such a closed country that I might not find any images of the ski jump outside of Beijing. So that'll be different, but I don't need to see it. I know enough that I can go into the venue and shoot it now. But I would literally build a volume of books of what are the best shots of ski jumping from the best ski jumping photographers in the world. And then I would study the venue. And then I would study satellite footage of the venue. So when I walked onto that venue, I was not a stranger to that venue. I'd been there over and over again. It was just now I got to walk around it and discover the sites where these good photos were taken. Because photographers can never keep a secret. They're not going to take a great picture and sit on it. Of course, they're going to take a great picture and publish it. So the secret's out. So where did they shoot that from? So it's feel more like a detective leading up to a lot of these Winter Olympics where the site dictates how you shoot the event. So I do a lot of prep for, an event I only shoot once every 4 years. It requires a lot of studying.
And what about the athletes? Do you study them?
Of course, I've got to find out who the best athletes in the world are in ski jumping. I mean, most of them come from Austria or Germany, but, who are they? Who are the new ones coming up? So again, that's all information that's out there. I just have to go looking for it. So I carry a little book with me, especially to the Winter Olympics, of pictures of all the top 10 athletes in ski jumping of men and women, and the top athletes in skeleton or luge.
So I feel like I know a little bit about this topic simply because someone I know has edited at the Olympics, but one thing that always struck me is sort of just you have to know so much about the venue, like you said, the athletes, but then also your clients.
Yes.
And what images they're going to want for, shapes and who and like all of that. Can you talk about that?
Well, just at Tokyo, we have clients paying us to take pictures of their athletes. Whether we had a contract from Cal Berkeley that wanted all their Cal Berkeley athletes shot. So I would have to have, my heat sheets, and I would, I need to shoot lane 5 and lane 2 and lane 1, and then, there could be as many as 16 heats. And so I have all my sheets laid out and highlighted and then you got to pay attention, because if you lose your focus, and miss a race, you've let a client down that's already prepaid for something. So photography at the Olympics is not about, it's a given about good photography. I'm not being invited if I wasn't a good photographer, but it's monetizing. I'm there to monetize profit for whoever I'm working for. And that includes AP and Getty and everyone else. We're trying to generate money, at the very least, to pay for the trip. Because I've always figured it's cost about $12,000 to put me in an Olympics for 3 weeks. So, and then you times that out by there could be as many as 20 photographers there and editors and stuff. So it's a $500,000 investment minimum that a corporation putting a small team in is making. So we're there to please our clients, and not getting a picture of someone that a client wants is unacceptable. So you
juxtapose that with the earlier question about art, right? That's a very unromantic view of.
It won't affect what I shoot, but I might have to take pictures of 4 swimmers swimming a 100-meter event. It's quick. So I have to know where the shots are made, which, depending on which stroke, and where the opportunities are. And if someone breathes on the right side or the left side, I've got to discover that in the first 25 meters before they hit the 50-meter wall. Can I shoot them on going this way? And then I jump to lane 7 and back to 2, and, that's why they always put me at swimming, because I can do that very well, of keeping track of the specials and not missing. We call them specials, that are special photographs that have been requested to shoot. And then shoot the race. I got to get the winner. I got to get the American. And when the winner isn't the American, that causes me problems. Because when do I pull off the winner? Waiting for sometimes the jubilation comes slowly, and it came very slowly in Tokyo. I think something to do with being no fans there. They just would sit in the water, and then they would sometimes react or sometimes not. But while I'm waiting for that reaction to happen from the winner, I'm missing dejection from the second or third place or wherever the Americans finished, which I need to get photos of. So it's a real balance of moving around quickly, knowing which lanes and what they look like, and just keeping my wits about me about it's not necessarily about looking for that great moment. We want that great moment, but it's making sure I get all the people that I have to get in that 30-second period.
How about that? All right. I think we might have time for maybe one more question. Anyone else? Thank you.
How's it going? My name's Connor Bonfili. I'm a master's student here. I played golf in my undergraduate school. I was wondering what the greatest golf shot you've ever witnessed is.
As far as in the moment, it was probably that Tiger Woods shot celebrating his 5th Masters and probably his last Masters.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
It wasn't expected for him to react like that. It was a very slow. We didn't actually think anything was going to happen because he missed his birdie putt, and then he walked up and he sank his par putt, and then he looked at it, and he sort of slowly stepped back away, slowly, and then it was like a lightning bolt, if you ever rewatch the moment, that he did that reaction. Literally, that whole reaction was less than a second, and I just remember following him off the 18th hole at Augusta and the crowd yelling, and I had never heard anything like that before. It was just a surreal experience, and then it being at Augusta National, which is a surreal place to take pictures. I have a lot of favorite golf pictures, but it all comes down to moments, and that was a special moment because it was probably his last major, maybe even his last tournament, major tournament he'll ever win. I personally liked Garcia winning. He was always a personal fan. I was always a fan of his, and watching Sergio win his first major at Augusta, I like that a lot. And he makes such nice photos.
Thank you.
Awesome. I think we're good. Yes? Well, thank you so much for coming out. Let's give a round of applause to Rob for joining us tonight. And I'm sure that if you have any other questions, feel free, go track him down, find him at the Republic if you'd like. But otherwise, thank you all for the attention, and good night.